Michael Lewis has made a literary career finding jump-off-the-page characters and using them to help tell complicated stories. And what could be more complicated than explaining cryptocurrency? Lewis gained all hours access to Sam Bankman-Fried, known for a time as the J.P. Morgan of crypto. His sector, as ungoverned as his hair, Bankman-Fried was worth more than $20 billion before he turned 30. An unlikely celebrity, his life braided finance, politics, sports, and pop culture. Then the empire crumbled, and today Bankman-Fried sits in jail on various federal charges and faces potential sentences of more than 100 years. Lewis, though, didn't panic sell. He simply went where the story took him. His latest book, Going Infinite, comes out Tuesday, which is also the opening day in the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried.
The story will continue in a moment.
You had so much access to Sam Bankman-Fried writing this book. What ultimately is the purpose here?
I realized I had an ambition for the book. I saw it as a kind of letter to the jury. I mean, there's going to be this trial, and the lawyers are going to tell two stories. And so there's a story war going on in the courtroom, and I think neither one of those stories is as good as the story I have.
Michael Lewis didn't set out to write this book. 2 autumns ago, he was at home in the Bay Area when he got a call from a friend interested in investing with a young billionaire. Could Lewis meet with this wunderkind and size him up? So it was Lewis brought Sam Bankman-Fried here in the Berkeley Hills for a hike in the park.
You gotta remember, I knew nothing about him. All I knew was I was supposed to evaluate his character, and that 18 months earlier, he had nothing. Now he had $22.5 billion and was the richest person in the world under 30. He didn't care much about like spending it on yachts. He was going to spend it to save humanity from extinction, kind of thing. So the whole walk was like, my jaw was on the floor by here after I heard all that.
As an author whose stock and trade is finding interesting characters, is your story meter starting to beep about now?
I was on red alert, and I said this to him. I said, I don't know what's going to happen to you. Something's going to happen to you. Can I just come and, ride shotgun? Now, riding shotgun ended up being like hanging on for dear life to an automobile that's going 270 miles an hour and taking every hairpin turn.
My instinct was we should very slowly be trickling out these positions.
Sam Bankman-Fried and Lewis would end up meeting more than 100 times over 2 years, speaking for countless hours. As our camera rolled in July, note how Bankman-Fried shuffled cards and jackhammered his legs and avoided eye contact. Lewis considers Bankman-Fried the most challenging and fascinating character he's ever encountered. This from an author who's been writing nonfiction since the 80s.
I want to talk about that conversation.
Yeah.
The story of Sam's life is people not understanding him, misreading him. He's so different. He's so unusual. I mean, I think in a funny way that the reason I have such a compelling story is I have a character that I do come to know, and that the reader comes to know, that the world still doesn't know.
Some Japanese yen.
A graduate of MIT, Bankman-Fried saw the world in numbers, framing everything in his life as a probability exercise, including philanthropy. He committed to making as much money as possible, so he could give it away as efficiently as possible, guided by a social movement, effective altruism.
What it means in Sam's instance is you can go out and have a career where you do good. You can go be a doctor in Africa, or you can go out and make as much money as possible and pay people to be doctors in Africa. If you're a doctor in Africa, you end up saving a certain number of lives, but you're only one doctor. But if you can pay 40 people to become doctors in Africa, you're going to save 40 times the number of lives.
This is like a strategy game.
Well, you don't understand Sam Bankman-Fried unless you understand that he turns everything into a game.
Right.
Everything is gamified.
Bankman-Fried worked as a Wall Street trader before moving to Berkeley at age 25 to start his own trading firm, Alameda Research. Instead of buying and selling stocks or bonds, he would traffic in crypto, a digital form of currency not tied to a centralized system.
The basic idea was to be the smartest person in the crypto markets, to be the one who did the kind of trading in crypto that the smartest Wall Street traders did in stocks.
So these quant skills he had as a trader on regular stocks and equities markets, he was going to bring to this new ascending crypto world.
Correct.
What's the difference between crypto finance and traditional finance?
Well, the promise of crypto finance is the promise of an absence of intermediaries. If I want to wire you $10,000, a bank has to do it. A bank records the transaction, a bank takes some little slice of it. If I want to wire you $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, I can just hit a button and you get it. So you remove the institutions.
Coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, crypto took hold as an anti-establishment, punk rock version of a financial system, which Lewis finds ironic.
In the beginning especially, it's a crowd of people who are incredibly mistrustful of institutions. What attracts them to it is they hate the government, they hate banks. But then they somehow, this pool of incredibly mistrustful people, proceed to trust each other in ways that I wouldn't trust you.
They're parking their money in a sector that's unregulated. There are no physical properties.
Provably squirrely and unreliable,
Right.
Over and over.
But it's predicated on trust.
It's like they are Charlie Brown kicking the football.
Right.
That they're sure that this time Lucy's going to hold it.
Still, Bankman-Fried made a fortune at Alameda Research. And then he really got rich. Instead of simply trading, Bankman-Fried seized on the idea of opening his own cryptocurrency exchange.
One of the things he notices is that all the crypto exchanges are screwed up in one way or another. There are dozens of these places where you can trade crypto, but they're not structured for a professional trader. The technology is bad, they'll lose their customers' money. It's the Wild West. Right. He realizes that if you built a better exchange, he wanted to build an exchange he could trade on. So he creates FTX. And once he created it, it went boom. And when it went boom, he realized that, well, that's the gold mine. It actually isn't trading the crypto.
This is owning the casino,
It's owning
right?
the casino. He started as a gambler, and he realized that, building the better casino was actually going to be more valuable.
FTX has seen explosive growth.
Soon, roughly $15 billion a day in trades were executed on his new exchange, FTX.
If you're sitting in the middle of those transactions and you're taking out even a tiny fraction of a percentage point, there's a lot of money to be made.
Indifferent to the outcome of the trade.
You're taking no risk. You're taking no risk at all. It didn't matter to him whether crypto went up or crypto went down. As long as people are trading crypto, it made money. It's the best business. I had one venture capitalist tell me that several of the venture capitalists thought that Sam might be the world's first trillionaire.
Trillionaire?
They're looking for the next Google. They're looking for the next Apple. They thought FTX had that kind of possibility, that it had a chance to be the single most important financial institution in the world.
As he began accumulating billions as if they were Pokemon cards, Bankman-Fried began attracting something else he wasn't accustomed to.
There's a lot of leverage in cryptocurrency markets.
Attention.
He changed not at all. He'd never been on TV. He goes on TV in his cargo shorts and his messy hair, and he's playing video games while he's on the air.
Wait. He's playing video games on the air.
You would think your first television appearance, you might be a little uptight, a little nervous. And if you watch the clip, you can see his eyes going back and forth. This is because he's trying to win his video game at the same time he's on the air.
Whether it was his smarts, his fierce indifference to appearance, or simply his vast wealth, the beautiful people suddenly found him irresistible. As his net worth goes up, so does his social capital. You write about a Zoom meeting you walked in on.
He says, I got to go do a Zoom. I said, what is it? And he says, there's this person named Anna Wintour, and he didn't know who she was.
You had no idea who she was?
No. So I sat off to one side where she couldn't see me, and I watched this Zoom.
Now, you're thinking, what does Anna Wintour want to do with a schlub like Sam?
Exactly. He is the worst dressed person in America. He is the worst dressed billionaire in the history of billionaires. What she wants him to do is to sponsor the Met Gala, her great ball that she throws every year, which is all about dress and appearances. Sam was a social experiment. He is a person who has nothing, all of a sudden has seemingly infinite dollars, will give it away, is unbelievably open-handed about it, and doesn't ask a whole lot of questions. What that attracts, who shows up when this person exists? Everybody.
Everyone comes to the trough.
Everybody comes to the trough. Everybody wants to be his best friend.
FTX is the safest and easiest way to buy and sell crypto.
Bankman-Fried wanted it known that FTX was the go-to player in crypto.
Hey, it's Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm excited to be partnering with FTX.
He turned to the sports world to bring his exchange both legitimacy and edge. Lewis saw the FTX internal marketing documents.
He paid Tom Brady $55 million for 20 hours a year for 3 years. He paid Steph Curry $35 million for same thing for 3 years.
Pretty good hourly wage.
He spent $100 and something million buying the naming rights for the Miami Heat arena.
I don't think so.
He spent $25 million making a Super Bowl ad with Larry David.
It's FTX?
I don't think so.
for which he then paid Larry David another $10 million. You know, it's breathtaking what's on that list.
Did any of the people surrounding him, these celebrities, do it because they found him interesting, or was it all because he's worth 20-some billion dollars?
It's probably not fair for me to speak for them, but I will speak for them. Tom Brady, I think, adored him.
Really?
I think Tom Brady thought he was just a really interesting person. I think he'd like to hear what he had to say.
What's up, guys? I'm here with my boy Sam from FTX.
And he really liked Tom Brady. And Sam wasn't like a big sports person, so it was funny to watch that interaction. It was like, these two people actually get along. It's like the class nerd and the quarterback.
Two high school tribes.
The nerd of all nerds. Like, even the nerds don't hang out with this nerd. He's such a nerd. The quarterback somehow likes him, and he somehow likes the quarterback.
Lewis writes in his book that Bankman-Fried's philanthropic ambitions kept pace with his wealth. Never mind doctors in Africa, he set out to confront what he saw as existential threats to all of humanity.
So Sam Bankman-Fried ends up with a portfolio heavily concentrated in two things. Pandemic prevention, because there really are things the government should be doing. And the other thing that made his list that was so interesting was Donald Trump. He took the view that all the big existential problems are going to require the United States government to be involved to solve them. And if the democracy is undermined, we don't have our democracy anymore, all these problems are less likely to be solved. And he saw Trump trying to undermine the democracy, and he thought Trump belongs on the list of existential risks.
To that end, Lewis writes that in 2022, Bankman-Fried met with the most unlikely of allies, Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
You're flying with Sam and he tells you about a meeting he's going to have with Mitch McConnell.
Well, the interesting thing starts before we even get on the plane. I meet him at the airport, and he comes tumbling out of a car, and he's in his cargo shorts and his T-shirt, and he's got balled up in his hand. It takes me a while to see what it is, but it's a blue suit. It's got more wrinkles than any blue suit ever had. It's like it's just jammed in this little ball. And a shoe like falls out of the pile that he's got in his arms. And I say, like, what? Why do you have the suit? He says, Mitch McConnell really cares what you wear when you meet with him. And he's having dinner in 6 hours with Mitch McConnell. And I said, well, you got the suit. You got a belt? He goes, no, I don't have a belt. I said, you have a shirt? He goes, no shirt. And the suit, you really can't wear that suit. And he goes, yeah, but they told me to bring a suit.
According to Lewis, Bankman-Fried wanted to help McConnell fund Republican candidates at odds with Donald Trump.
What is the subtext of this dinner is Sam is going to write tens of millions of dollars of checks to a super PAC that Mitch McConnell is then going to use to get elected people who are not hostile to democracy.
Wait, so Mitch McConnell has a list of Republican candidates who are sort of on the playing field for democracy versus what he deemed outside.
He and his people had done the work to distinguish between actual deep Trumpers and people who were just seeming to approve of Donald Trump, but were actually willing to govern.
Bankman-Fried ended up giving multi-millions in support of Republican candidates. Back in 2020, Bankman-Fried had ranked among Joe Biden's biggest donors. As 2024 approached, he planned on spending more, albeit in the most unconventional way.
One of the most shocking passages in this book, I thought, came with this revelation that Sam had looked into paying Donald Trump not to run.
That only shocks you if you don't know Sam. Sam's thinking, we could pay Donald Trump not to run for president. Like, how much would it take?
Did he get an answer?
So he did get an answer. He was floated. There was a number that was kicking around, and the number that was kicking around when I was talking to Sam about this was $5 billion. Sam was not sure that number came directly from Trump.
Wait. So Sam's looking into paying Trump not to run, and he actually might not have come from Trump himself, but he actually got a price?
He got one answer, yes. The question Sam had was not just is $5 billion enough to pay Trump not to run, but was it legal?
Well, why didn't this happen? Why didn't he follow through?
Well, they were still having these conversations when FTX blew up. So why it didn't happen? He didn't have $5 billion anymore.
Approached for comment by 60 Minutes, neither former President Trump nor Senator McConnell responded. Last November, in a matter of days, mega billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried lost virtually everything, and he soon faced an onslaught of federal fraud charges. When we return, the fall of Sam Bankman-Fried. Meteoric as the rise of Sam Bankman-Fried was, the fall came faster still. In a span of days, a celebrity multi-billionaire became a pariah. His wealth largely evaporated as federal prosecutors mounted a case against him. In his new book out this week, Michael Lewis details the crash and leaves it to readers to decide if Sam Bankman-Fried was a cryptocurrency conman in cargo shorts or a really smart guy singularly ill-equipped to run and manage a business.
The story will continue in a moment.
By spring of 2022, Sam Bankman-Fried had planted his flag in the Bahamas. He decided to move his high-flying cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, to the islands, not for the beaches, but for the friendly regulatory climate. With the Prime Minister on hand, they put shovels in the ground for a new headquarters. Bankman-Fried openly discussed paying off the country's $9 billion national debt. By this point, Michael Lewis and Bankman-Fried had a dynamic that went beyond author-subject.
And he started using me as a sounding board.
For what?
For just like decisions he was making. Should I join Elon Musk in buying Twitter? You know, should we do this? Should we do that?
What'd you tell him?
Mostly my answers were no, no, and no. And he would look at me and say, you're a boring grown-up.
And Bankman-Fried, now 31, told Lewis, now 62, that anyone older than 45 was useless. But Lewis noted that if ever there were a corporate leader in need of adult input to manage 400 employees, it was Sam Bankman-Fried.
What kind of a manager was he?
Horrible. I mean, even his best friends inside the company said Sam is just not built to manage people.
Had Sam managed anything before?
His sole experience of leadership was running puzzle hunts for math nerds at high school, and actually thought deep down, if you asked him, people shouldn't need to be managed. So he proceeded to act on that and basically didn't manage them.
Is there any checks and balances happening in this environment then?
Well, what checks and balances would you imagine there might be in a corporation?
Chief financial officer?
No, there's no chief financial officer.
HR department?
No, there was no HR department.
Compliance office?
No. There was no board of directors. Or rather, I asked Sam, I said, who's your board of directors? And he said, we don't really have one. I said, what do you mean you don't have one? Everyone has one. He says, there are two other people on something called a board of directors, but it's changed and I don't even know their names. And their job is just to DocuSign.
He didn't know the name of the board of directors?
No, he didn't know who was on it.
So he's running this like a lemonade stand, and he's doing enough volume of business. This could be a public traded company if you wanted to.
Oh, no, if it was a publicly traded company, it would be a publicly traded company worth $40 billion. No, it was all Sam's world. And there was nobody there to say, like, don't do that.
FTX purchased a $30 million executive penthouse in the Bahamas resort, flush with an exclusive marina. It was lost on Sam, who worked feverishly in the office and slept on a beanbag chair. But there was another reason he avoided the luxe penthouse. His girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, a former Wall Street trader herself, had kicked him out. Compounding matters, he had put her in charge of running Alameda Research, Bankman-Fried's privately held trading firm.
So the romance between Sam and Caroline goes sideways. How does that impact what happens to FTX and Alameda Research?
Coincidentally, the romance more than goes sideways. They have a falling out where they're basically not speaking to each other. She's not speaking to him at precisely the time crypto collapses.
Explain why that's a problem.
It's a problem because Alameda Research is one of the traders on FTX.
Translation: though Bankman-Fried owned the FTX exchange, he was also trading crypto on FTX through his other business, Alameda Research.
And he was gambling in his own casino. And it created conflicts of interest.
So he owns the casino, but he's still gambling.
Yes, he didn't stop gambling.
Crypto is destabilized.
The value of crypto had been eroding throughout the summer of 2022. Then came a 1-2 punch. A leak of Alameda's unflattering balance sheet in early November. And days later, Changpeng Zhao, head of a rival exchange, took to Twitter to question FTX's viability. This triggered a classic panic run, digital style, on FTX.
How fast was money flowing out of FTX?
In the run, $1 billion a day was leaving. And
$1 billion a day, this thing's gushing.
Yeah, it unravels because the depositors at FTX want their money back, and it's not all there.
It wasn't all there in large part because the investors' money intended for FTX had wound up in Bankman-Fried's privately held fund, Alameda Research, more than $8 billion.
Do you think he knowingly stole customers' money, Sam?
Put that way, no. So there's another side of this. In the very beginning, if you were a crypto trader who wanted to trade on FTX and wanted to send dollars or yen or euros onto the exchange so you could buy crypto, FTX couldn't get bank accounts. So Alameda Research, which could get bank accounts, created bank accounts for people to send money into so that it would go to FTX. But it was held in Alameda Research bank accounts. And $8 billion something piles up inside of Alameda Research that belongs to FTX customers that never gets moved.
It never gets transferred over.
Never gets transferred.
That sounds like a problem.
It's a huge problem.
What's the toughest question you think Sam's going to have to answer?
How do you not know that $8 billion that's not yours is in your private fund? I mean, really, how do you not know? Explain. $8 billion is in your private fund that belongs to other people, and you're saying you didn't know. Please explain how that's possible.
Did you do that?
Yeah, I did.
What did he say?
He said you have to understand that when it went in there, it was a rounding error, that I felt like we had infinity dollars in there, that I wasn't even thinking about it.
I could see people watching this saying, like, come on, guys, this is Elizabeth Holmes in cargo shorts.
Right.
And this is all a ruse. Don't fall for the shtick. This is a bad actor.
It is a little different, supplying phony medical information to people that might kill them. And in this case, what you're doing is possibly losing some money that belonged to crypto speculators in the Bahamas. On the other hand, this is not to excuse. He shouldn't have done that.
Early in the morning of November 11th, Sam Bankman-Fried reluctantly docu-signed FTX into bankruptcy. It had taken 5 days for FTX to implode.
You go back to the Bahamas as Pompeii is falling. What did you see when you landed?
I got back the day on the Friday of the collapse. It was the afternoon that Sam had signed the bankruptcy papers. And by then, there'd been a mass exodus. Most of the employees had fled, and fled in such a way that, kind of a ridiculous way. They'd taken the company cars and ditched them at the airport with the keys inside. Or they were going to
get the hell out of
Nobody knew what had happened, but they were just scared that they were going to be detained by the local authorities. We drove into the lot, and Sam Bankman-Fried is walking loops around the parking lot. He'd been brought over there earlier to be interviewed by Bahamas authorities, and nobody had given him a ride home, and he was just sitting there all alone.
How do you divorce Michael Lewis, the empathetic human being, from Michael Lewis, the journalist and author who recognizes what a third act this is? Pretty dramatic, right?
If I were a better person, I would have been deeply distressed by all of this. It took about a nanosecond before I thought, oh my God, this is an incredible story.
A month later, Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas and extradited to New York to face federal charges that he had fraudulently used customer deposits to finance billions of dollars of venture capital investments, real estate purchases, and political donations.
What's your response to someone who hears this and says, it's a fun story and it's crypto in the Bahamas, but this is the oldest architecture of a financial collapse that's been going on for centuries?
This isn't a Ponzi scheme. Like when you think of a Ponzi scheme, I don't know, Bernie Madoff. The problem is there's no real business there. The dollar coming in is being used to pay the dollar going out. And in this case, they actually had a great real business. If no one had ever cast aspersions on the business, if there hadn't been a run on customer deposits, they'd still be sitting there making tons of money.
Inside the Beltway, in the Hollywood Hills, and in sports arenas, suddenly, if predictably, it was Sam Bankman who?
He becomes toxic. Like, nobody wants to talk to him. He has no friends. You watch everybody who rushed in rush out.
How did Tom Brady react to this?
The first reaction was it was sadness. I clearly really liked him, and he really liked the hope that he brought. I mean, a lot of people wanted there to be a Sam. There is still a Sam Bankman-Fried shaped hole in the world that now needs filling. Like, that character would be very useful.
What he represented.
What he wanted to do with the resources. And Brady was, I think, crushed, and I think as time has gone by and he ceased to get a really good explanation about what's happened, I think he's just like, he tricked me, I'm angry, I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore.
Starting in December, Lewis began driving the 45 miles from Berkeley to Stanford, where Bankman-Fried was living with his parents, who have also been ensnared in legal proceedings tied to FTX. Out on bail, but wearing an ankle monitor, he left the door open for Lewis so they could continue their conversations. We anticipated speaking with Bankman-Fried in August, but the judge in his case instituted a gag order and then put him in a Brooklyn jail for violating terms of his release. Bankman-Fried has pled not guilty.
He genuinely thinks he's innocent. I can tell you his state of mind 4 or 5 months ago. It's like, if you offered me plead guilty and do 6 months of house arrest, I'd still say no.
What do you suspect his biggest fear is if he has to go to prison?
Not having the internet. Now, that sounds crazy, but I do think that if he had the internet, he could survive jail forever. Without having a constant stream of information to react to, I think he may go mad. If you gave Sam Bankman-Fried a choice, this is quite serious, of living in a $39 million penthouse in the Bahamas without the internet, or the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn with the internet, there's no question in my mind he'd take the jail.
Michael Lewis has never before written something that dovetails so dramatically with a sensationalized news event. Lewis's book, Going Infinite, comes out Tuesday, the same day Sam Bankman-Fried's trial begins.
He made a mockery of crypto in the eyes of many. He was sort of taking away the credibility of effective altruism. How do you see him?
Everything you say is just true, and it's more interesting than that. Every cause he sought to serve, he damaged. Every cause he sought to fight, he helped. He was a person who set out in life to maximize the consequences of his actions, never mind the intent. And he had exactly the opposite effects of the ones he set out to have. So it looks to me like his life is a cruel joke.
Michael Lewis on why he nearly stopped writing after his daughter's death.
I didn't know if I ever wanted to write again.
At 60minutesovertime.com.